Roy's blood ran cold. He hadn't told anyone he was driving tonight.
It was just after midnight when Jack Big Rig Carson rolled into a sleepy truck stop on Route 66. The air was thick with a humid fog, and the only sound was the faint hum of distant cicadas. His 18-wheeler, the Iron Beast, had been running hard for 14 straight hours, and he needed a break. He had one more delivery to make, a mysterious last-minute job from a nameless client, but the pay was too good to question.
One last stretch, then I'm home,
Jack muttered, rubbing his gritty eyes. The truck stop diner was empty, save for an old radio playing classic rock under the dull hum of neon lights. The waitress behind the counter, a thin woman with hollow eyes, looked up with a strained smile as he entered.
"What'll it be on?"
she asked, her voice rough as sandpaper.
just coffee black.
Jack said, not wanting to stay long. As she poured, Jack noticed something off about the place. The walls were lined with faded photos of truckers, all staring dead-eyed into the camera. Some looked recent, others decades old. One caught his eye, a guy in a flannel shirt and cap who looked exactly like him. A shiver crawled up Jack's spine, but he brushed it off as coincidence. After finishing his coffee, Jack paid the waitress, tipped his cap, and headed back to his rig. As he climbed into the cab, a crumpled piece of paper fell from the visor. Frowning, Jack unfolded it. "Don't open the cargo." He stared at the words, feeling the hairs on his arms stand on end. His breath quickened. It wasn't his handwriting, and he had no idea how it got there. Jack glanced back at the trailer. Client had insisted that no one, not even the driver, could inspect the contents. All Jack knew was that it was heavy, damn heavy, and required top-tier security. He was to drive straight to a desolate warehouse on the outskirts of Arizona. No questions, no stops. He started the engine, the familiar roar doing little to calm his nerves. With a low rumble, the Iron Beast lurched onto the road. As he drove through the fog-choked highway, the CB radio crackled to light.
Breaker 19. This is Big Rig Carson. Any ears on? Anyone out there?
Then, a voice, faint and garbled, like it was being drowned in stacks. "You shouldn't have taken the load." Jack's heart pounded. He grabbed the mic.
Who is this?
More static, and then
It'll be too late when you find out.
Jack swore under his breath, turning up the volume. The voice was gone, replaced by a low buzzing. Something was seriously wrong. His mind raced. Was someone messing with him, or was this some kind of warning? Up ahead, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A figure stood in the middle of the road. Jack slammed on the brakes, the Iron Beast screeching as it slid to a stop. His headlights illuminated the figure, a man drenched in blood, with a crazed look in his eyes. The man pointed directly at the trailer.
You have to let it go before it gets out.
Jack's pulse raced. Without thinking, he floored the gas pedal, swerving around the man and barreling down the road. His eyes darted to the rearview mirror, but the man had vanished. Jack's hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. Whatever was in that trailer, it was something bad. Real bad. The road twisted and turned as he sped toward his destination. Then, from behind him, a loud thud echoed from the trailer. Jack's blood ran. Another thud, louder this time. Something inside was moving. The truck swayed as if something heavy was throwing itself against the walls of the cargo hold. A third thud, followed by a screech. Jack glanced in the rearview mirror and saw something unimaginable. The trailer doors were buckling, bending outwards as if being pried open from within. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the night, shaking the truck to its core. Bang! The doors flew open, revealing a mass of writhing, shadowy limbs and glowing red eyes. Whatever was in there, it wasn't human. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. His instincts screamed at him to abandon the rig and run, but there was no time, no place to hide. The thing inside the trailer had broken free. The creature lunged from the back of the trailer, a grotesque mix of sinew and shadow, its glowing eyes locking onto Jack. It moved with unnatural speed, slithering up the side of the truck like a spider, its claws tearing into the metal. Jack grabbed the shotgun he kept under the seat and fired out the window, the blast echoing through the night. The creature screamed, but it wasn't enough. It slammed into the side of the cab, shattering the window. Cold, inhuman fingers reached for him, and Jack fought with everything he had. He jerked the wheel hard to the left, sending the truck careening off the road. The iron beast tumbled, metal screeching and glass shattering. Jack was thrown from his seat, everything a blur of pain and noise. When the world finally stopped spinning, Jack crawled out of the wreckage, bloodied and bruised. The creature was gone, the trailer a mangled mess. He staggered to his feet, scanning the darkness. In the distance, he saw headlights approaching, pacing a convoy of trucks. One of them slowed to a stop, and a man in a flannel shirt and cap, just like the one in the diner photo, stepped out. He smiled a hollow, knowing smile.
You made it. Not many do.
What was that thing?
Jack gasped, still clutching his shotgun. The man's smile widened.
Welcome to the job. You're one of us now.
Jack's legs gave out as the man's words sunk in. He wasn't just a trucker anymore. He was part of something darker, something ancient, and there was no going back. The convoy rolled past, disappearing into the night, leaving Jack standing alone on the side of the road, the weight of his cursed cargo still looming over him. Roy Redline Harris was a veteran trucker, 20 years on the road, and he'd seen it all, or so he thought. Nothing rattled him anymore. Not the weather, not the isolation, and certainly not the long, desolate stretches of road that ran through the heart of the country like veins through a corpse. But this night, as he pulled onto Route 13, the air felt different, heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Roy had a reputation for delivering cargo on time, no matter the conditions. Tonight was no exception. His load was classified government work, apparently. All he knew was that it was dangerous. A heavy, reinforced trailer, armed guards at the pickup, and strict instruction. No stops, no questions. The rain began to pour as his rig, the Widowmaker, barreled down the pitch-black highway. His headlights cut through the sheets of water, but visibility was next to nothing. The windshield wipers worked overtime, slashing back and forth like metronomes, marking the passage of time. He was miles from civilization, surrounded by nothing but forests and endless blacktop. The hum of the engine was the only sound, until the CB radio crackled to life.
Breaker 19, this is Redline. Anybody out there?
Roy said, his voice gruff from too much coffee and too many cigarettes, and then a voice came through, faint, almost ghostly.
You're on the road now, aren't you, Roy?
Roy's blood ran cold. He hadn't told anyone he was driving tonight. He flicked the CB off, thinking it was some local messing with him. But before he could settle back into his rhythm, the voice crackled through again, this time clearer, louder.
They never tell you what's in the back, do they?
Roy's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, staring at the black void behind the trailer. He gripped the wheel tighter. He flipped the CB back on, his voice steady but cold.
Who the hell is this?
The radio buzzed again.
I've been where you are, Roy. I drove this route. Now I'm stuck here.
Roy's stomach twisted. He was getting ready to ignore the transmission altogether when, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something on the side of the road. A figure. At first, it was just a blur, barely visible in the downpour. But as he passed it, Roy saw it was a man standing perfectly still in the rain. He was dressed in an old trucker's jacket and cap, drenched but unflinching, his face pale and expressionless. Roy's heart raced. He slammed the pedal down, forcing the rig to speed up. The road stretched on, dark and endless, but the unease gnawed at him like a sickness. Something was wrong with that man. Something wasn't natural. His knuckles turned white on the wheel as he sped past mile markers and rain-soaked trees. Then up ahead, another figure stood by the roadside. It was the same man. Roy blinked, his mind reeling. There was no way anyone could have gotten that far ahead of him. The man stood in the exact same pose, still as a statue soaking wet, staring with those dead eyes. The CB crackled again.
They never make it, Roy. Not all the way.
Roy slammed the CB down and cursed under his breath. He hit the gas, pushing the Widowmaker harder. The engine roared like an animal, but his heartbeat was louder in his ears. The road was straight, but the fog rolled in thick, swirling like smoke around the truck. His headlights seemed to dim, swallowed by the night. Then, out of nowhere, a deafening bang echoed from the trailer. The whole rig shuddered, and Roy nearly lost control. He pulled off to the side, cursing as he threw the brake, and jumped out into the rain, shotgun in hand. His boots splashed through the mud as he ran to the back of the trailer. The reinforced doors were still locked tight. He pressed his ear to the cold metal, listening. Thump. Something was moving inside, heavy, pacing, breathing. Roy's stomach dropped. He'd hauled some strange cargo in his day, but nothing like this. He was about to bolt back to the cab when, behind him, he heard a soft drip drip. He turned slowly. There, standing not 10 feet away, soaked, motionless, only this time, the man's mouth opened, impossibly wide. From within came a low, unnatural moan that made the hairs on Roy's neck stand on end. Roy backed up slowly, his heart pounding in his chest, the rain now mingling with his sweat. The man took a step forward, and Roy raised the shotgun, but his hands were trembling. Then the figure spoke, his voice garbled and distant, like it came from the bottom of a well.
It's your turn, Roy. Just like it was mine.
Roy's finger tightened on the trigger, but before he could fire, the man vanished, simply blinked out of existence. Roy stood there, drenched and shaken, staring at the empty spot where the figure had been. He didn't waste any more time. He bolted for the cab, jumped in, and slammed the door shut. The rain pounded harder now, the storm growing more violent by the second. He jammed the rig into gear, tires screeching as he peeled back onto the highway. The Widowmaker roared through the storm, but the feeling of dread only grew. The road seemed endless. The clock on the dashboard had stopped, stuck at 12.
They don't tell you because they don't want you to know. You can't escape it. You're just like the rest of us now.
In the mirror, Roy saw them, dozens of figures lining the road, each one a pale, soaked trucker, eyes empty, faces gaunt, mouths open in a silent scream. As the Widowmaker sped past, they turned their heads in unison, watching him with hollow stares. The trailer began to shake violently. Whatever was inside wanted out, and it was close. Roy could feel it, hear it scratching, growling, pushing against the walls. His chest tightened. There was no way out. Suddenly, the road ended. A massive, looming wall of fog stood before him, swallowing the highway whole. He slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The Widowmaker plunged into the fog, and everything went white. When Roy woke, the truck was still. He sat up slowly, his head pounding, his hands shaking. The storm had passed. The night was eerily calm, but the clock still read 12, and the road behind him was empty. The CB crackled one last time.
Welcome to Route 13, Roy. You're one of us now.
And from the fog, a pale figure began to approach, eyes dead, mouth open in a silent scream. Roy gripped the wheel. There was no escape. He had become the next in line, the latest ghost on the Highway Phantom's route. Earl Davis was a trucker through and through. 4 decades on the road had made him a legend among his peers. They said Earl could haul anything, through any storm, and never miss a deadline. But there was one road he swore he'd never drive again, Highway 59, a desolate, 2-lane strip winding through the mountains. Locals called it Deadman's Pass, a place riddled with accidents, disappearances, and ghost stories. Earl had driven it once, years ago, and something happened that he never talked about. Now, as he sat in his cab at a diner on the outskirts of town, sipping his black coffee, his dispatcher called.
Hey, hello.
Earl, I got a special load for you. Needs to be hauled to the other side of the state by dawn. Good money, no questions asked.
Earl frowned.
What's the route?
Highway 59?
A chill ran down his spine.
Ass. No way. I don't do that road.
Earl, it's a government contract. Big payout. You just gotta pick it up and get it across the pass. No one else can take it on such short notice.
Fine, send me the details.
The pickup was at a military depot just outside town. When Earl arrived, the yard was deserted except for 2 armed guards standing by a steel-reinforced trailer. They didn't say a word as they hitched the trailer to his rig. One of them handed him a clipboard with a single instruction: do not stop. Under any circumstances, Earl glanced at the guards, but their faces were expressionless, like statues. He gave a curt nod and climbed into the cab. The moment he pulled out of the yard, rain began to fall in a heavy sheet, and the storm clouds swallowed the last traces of daylight. Earl was alone with whatever was in that trailer. He turned onto Highway 59, the tires of his rig slicing through the puddles forming on the road. The headlights barely penetrated the thick fog that was rolling in off the mountains. Earl glanced in the rearview mirror, but the trailer was just a black silhouette against the darkened sky. He couldn't shake the feeling that something inside was watching him. The storm grew worse. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the road in flashes. Each time it did, Earl thought he saw shadows moving at the edges of the highway. He told himself it was just the rain and the wind playing tricks on his eyes, but his gut told him something was very wrong. After a couple of hours, Earl noticed something strange. The road signs were no longer familiar, the mile markers were missing, and every turn felt like a loop, as if he was driving in circles. He checked the GPS, no signal. That's when the CB radio crackled.
And Breaker 19, this is Diesel. Anyone got their ears on?
He tried again, but only static came through. Then after a long, tense moment, a voice, low and distorted, broke through the static.
You're not alone, Earl.
Earl froze. His heart hammered in his chest as he picked up the mic.
Who's this?
Static. Then the voice again, this time clearer but filled with a sinister tone.
You can't outrun it. No one does.
Earl slammed the CB down. his hand shaking. His knuckles were white as he gripped the wheel. He tried to push the unsettling voice from his mind, focusing on the road ahead, but the fog thickened, swallowing everything. The truck's headlights felt like they were cutting through nothing at all. Suddenly, the trailer rocked. Earl glanced in the rearview mirror, just in time to see the back of the trailer bulge outward, as if something enormous inside was slamming against the walls. His heart leaped into his throat. The truck swayed dangerously and Earl struggled to keep thud. Another massive blow from inside the trailer, followed by a deep, guttural growl that made Earl's blood run cold.
Jesus.
He whispered, sweat trickling down his temple.
What the hell are they hauling?
The radio crackled again, and the same voice, cold and taunting, whispered,
It's awake now, Earl.
His skin crawled. Something was alive in there, something that wasn't supposed to be. He wanted to pull over, unhook the trailer, and leave it on the side of the road. But the words on that clipboard echoed in his head, "Do not stop." The rain intensified, turning the road into a river of black water. Earl's windshield wipers were barely keeping up, and visibility was next to nothing. He was driving blind. Another thud, this one harder, followed by the unmistakable screech of tearing metal. Earl's eyes darted to the side mirror just as the rear doors of the trailer burst open. In the mirror, he saw something he could barely comprehend: dark, shadowy limbs crawling out of the trailer, like the fingers of some enormous beast, stretching and clawing at the outside world. Earl's heart pounded in his chest. His hands shook as the truck bucked and swerved. Whatever was in there was getting out. The dark shapes slithered and twisted, growing larger, spilling onto the road. They looked like shadows, but they moved with a purpose, creeping closer to the cab. Earl slammed his foot on the gas. The engine roared as the Widowmaker sped down the highway, but the shadowy tendrils kept humming, faster now, growing longer, stretching toward the cab. The voice on the CB radio returned, laughing now a cold, bone-chilling sound.
You can't run from it, Earl. You can't escape.
Earl's pulse was racing. He grabbed the shotgun he always kept under the seat, knowing deep down that bullets wouldn't help against whatever that was, but he had to try. He rolled down the window, the rain whipping into the cab as he leaned out and fired into the darkness. The shadows screeched, recoiling for a moment, but they quickly regrouped, crawling up the sides of the truck. Earl fired again, but it was no use. They were too fast, too many. Suddenly, one of the shadowy tendrils lashed out and wrapped around the side mirror, pulling itself closer. Another slammed against the window, splintering the glass. Earl's breath hitched in his throat. He knew what was coming next. The shadows weren't just trying to escape the trailer, they were coming for him. With one last burst of speed, Earl saw something in the distance. A tunnel, the entrance to Deadman's Pass. He gunned the engine, praying the tunnel would offer some protection, some way to escape. But just as he reached the mouth of the tunnel, the CB crackled one last time.
You're part of the cargo now, Earl.
The shadows surged forward, and the cab was swallowed in darkness. The rig disappeared into the tunnel, and the sound of the storm faded into nothingness. Hours later, when the rain stopped, the truck was found abandoned. The trailer doors were open, the inside empty. No cargo, no shadows, and no sign of Earl Davis. They say if you drive Highway 59 at night, you can still hear him on the CB, calling for help from the shadows, but no one ever answers.